folks, welcome to my Best of Publishers series. My name is Tom Vasel, and I'm talking about my favorite games from different publishers. Today is one of the biggest publishers out there, and that's Fantasy Flight Games. Now, Fantasy Flight Games has recently been acquired by Asmodee North America. Or if you want to look at it more cynically, it looks like Asmodee North America has been acquired by Fantasy Flight Games. But whatever the case, Fantasy Flight Games, when they first came onto the scene about 20 years ago, they weren't that amazing of a company. They had some small games, and they were breaking into a market that at the time was very much a Euro game market. Games like from Cosmos and Mayfair and other companies were just really dominating the market. And Fantasy Flight made games that were what we often call Marathrash style, or very thematic, from Twilight Imperium to Battle Mist, and they were making these games, and the game's components were okay. But as time went by, their components got better and better and better. Their rule books at first were decent, but as time went by, they got better at that. They went from a small company to one of the biggest companies out there. And it's no surprise that my top 10 lists are just some of my favorite games, period. Almost every game on my top 10 list here is in my top 100 games of all time, which makes Fantasy Flight Games one of the biggest companies. If they're making a game, I'm probably going to enjoy it. Now, as the years have gone by, they've really moved into licensed style games, where they're taking, things like Star Wars. They got the license for Star Wars miniatures and cards games. They've done Game of Thrones. They have a lot of different things that they do, and they've kind of followed on those paths. I think I enjoyed them the most in the early 2000s when they had some licenses but not others, so they were doing more original games. But you never know what's around the corner. Anyway, here are my 10 favorite Fantasy Flight games. Number 10 is a reprint. This was actually originally an Asmodee game, but I put this one on my list because I like it a lot, and I think the reprint was differentiated enough to really put it here, and that's Mission Red Planet. Now, Mission Red Planet is a game that really, I still think it doesn't get, the kind of love it should. It's an area control game, but it's also a card-playing game where you play a card to put astronauts on a spaceship, then send the spaceship up to Mars. Has a very cool steampunk, Jules Verne-ish type theme to it. A lot of interaction between players, but very simple concept. Play a card and see what happens. Number 9 is Twilight Imperium 3rd Edition. Now, you might wonder, Vasel, I thought this was one of your favorite games. Well, it is. Most of these are. But it's kind of dampened somewhat as the years have gone by because it takes so long to play. The last time I played it was a live playing through that you can watch here on our channel. But Twilight Imperium, I never played the first one, but I played the second one, really enjoyed it. And when it came out with the 3rd edition, it added a lot of Euro mechanisms from Puerto Rico and other things. I was enthralled. It was also beautiful. And then they added 2 mega expansions. There's just so much in this. This is still the definitive space opera style game. Nothing really has come close to it. There's lots of games that try to do it in a shorter period of time, but nothing is as grandiose and as amazing as Twilight Imperium 3rd edition. Number 8 is Star Wars Armada. Like I said, Fantasy Flight has a Star Wars license. This is not the only Star Wars game on this list. However, this does knock off on my list another game of theirs, X-Wing. I really enjoy X-Wing miniatures. There's a hard list to break on. X-Wing miniatures is the game that probably is keeping Fantasy Flight in business at this point. They are selling oodles of that. It's outselling most miniature games in the market, period. When they came out with Armada, though, I was really intrigued because I wanted to fly around at Star Destroyers. I wanted to fly around big ships and then have the little ships go around. And it brings to mind the old ship versus ship combat. So this whole thing just really works well. Beautiful miniatures, Star Wars Armada. Number 7 is Battlelore 2nd Edition. And it makes me sad that it's so low on this list, but that's just because they have so many great games. But Battlelore 2nd Edition, there are 3 different armies for it. This is the most asked question I get. People say, when is the next, more stuff coming out for it? I don't know, but they took a big miniatures game like Warhammer and things like that and condensed it down to a smaller game, combining that with the Commands and Color system from Richard Borg, combining it with just really beautiful miniatures. It is an absolutely stupendous game. Number 6 is Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. Mansions of Madness didn't have a chance at making this list. Mansions of Madness is a fine game, but it was fiddly and stuff. Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition, though, really helped by adding an app to the game where the app controlled everything and you played together or solo. And it added atmosphere and spookiness and just entertainment to a really cool Cthulhu theme. Lots of fun pieces. I just love this game. Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. And I'm saying on the Cthulhu theme, my number 5 is Eldritch Horror. I debated which one of these to put higher. Eldritch Horror was the sequel to Arkham Horror, which was a great game in its own right, but Eldritch Horror was a more focused theme to Eldritch Horror was more focused to theme to Arkham Horror because you were going over the world, but whatever big elder one you were fighting, whether it was Cthulhu or Azog or whatever the one it was, then that particular elder guy would have events go through, and it felt like a more cohesive story. Also, it had more of an Indiana Jones feel to it. It's big, it's grandiose, I like it. Big and grandiose is probably a way to talk about a lot of games on here. Number 4 is another Star Wars game. This is Star Wars Rebellion. Star Wars Rebellion is a 2-player game in which one person is playing the Rebellion and the other person is playing the Empire. And the Empire is trying to figure out where the Rebellion hid their base. And there's 8 AT-ATs in it. There is Star Destroyers. There's the Death Star. You can blow up planets. Luke Skywalker's running around. It's like Star Wars in a box is what I like to call it. And it is true. Also, lots of great strategy. Number 3 is another Star Wars game, Star Wars Imperial Assault. Star Wars Imperial Assault was the Star Wars version of Descent, kind of like a dungeon crawl, but this one it didn't really feel like a dungeon crawl, felt like missions as you go through and you're battling and there's Wookiees and Jedi and all sorts of things. But the game was 2 different games. There's also a tactical game in the box, one I enjoyed very much. And then number 2 is Descent. Now, I like Star Wars better than fantasy probably, but Descent just has a very cool backstory. Now, Descent has a strong competitor these days, but the Descent itself, there's so many monsters, there's so much dice, it's just a lot of fun, and it has a really good campaign system. This is the 2nd edition of Descent I'm talking about. The 1st edition was great, but the 2nd one really honed it through, just fantastic. And my number 1 favorite game for Fantasy Flight, well, Cosmic Encounter, which is my favorite game. And you say, but that's not originally Fantasy Flight. You're right. It was originally Eon Games, and then it went through many publishers, including Mayfair, and Games Workshop had it for a brief moment of time. Some other companies had it. Avalon Hill had it, but Fantasy Flight made the definitive version, period. I mean, the other versions don't even come close. Fantasy Flight's version, with its 6 expansions, provides so much entertainment that if I got rid of every game in my collection and I was only allowed to play Cosmic Encounter for the rest of my life, I'd be okay, and I'd probably never play the same game twice. That's fantastic. It is a marvelous game. Fantasy Flight Games makes games of the highest quality. I cannot wait to see what they do next. These are my 10 favorite games. What are yours? I'm sure you differ on this dramatically. Tell me in the comments. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching the best of Fantasy Flight Games.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.